So again, before we get to our 75, I want to ask you a serious question. This is a serious one, and there's no humor in this. And I want to preface this by saying this is a legitimate question. I think a lot of people, this is a fair question to ask. It's not me calling anybody out whatsoever. So I want to be very, very clear on that. This is a legitimate question. We all know that Kim Pegula is not in good shape. Okay. What we don't know are any details. And my question for you, and this is like an opinionated question for you. Why is no one reporting anything at all on what's going on with Kim Pegula? Now, again, it's a serious situation. She is the team president of two major sports teams. Okay. It's not just newsworthy, it's top of the news cycle worthy. And we've heard zero updates, zero anything. And again, I get they put out a statement asking to respect their privacy. I completely understand that. I truly do. And again, I'm not being an asshole about this. There's no sarcasm whatsoever. But again, this is news. Kim Pegula, Sabres team president, Kim Pegula, Bills team president, is ill. Something is definitely wrong, and nobody knows nothing. And this is news to me. Do you find it odd? Do you think, I'm sure some media know some stuff, what's going on with her condition and what the seriousness is. Do you feel like maybe some people were told by the Pegulas to, by their corporation, you're not reporting nothing, or which they don't have a right to do. I mean, they have a right to ask, but they don't have a right to enforce that. Do you think there's some media out there that might even be a little bit, I don't want to say necessarily afraid, but there's going to be consequence if they're the ones who put out a story saying this is the situation and this, that, and the other thing? I just find it really fascinating and odd that something significant and serious is going on with somebody who's so well known, and like it's crickets when it comes to any medical update or anything like that whatsoever. Nothing since that statement.
Yeah, it's in a very odd gray area of a lot of issues. Like this is, a lot of people are like, well, it's not news, respect to privacy. Well, wrong. It is news. It's very big news. Like,
sure.
It's co-owner of the team, president of both teams, co-owner of, the giant operation, and president of both, of two major franchises. They're the richest family in the city. I don't know about the Jacobses, but Pegulas are, but they have a giant influence on the city of Buffalo. Like this,
if it was Robert Kraft, would there be radio silence when it comes to any reporting and updates?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's the thing. And, and I know for a fact that reporters are trying to get to the bottom of this. They're trying to find out what's going on, but you have to kind of toe the line. Right. And you have to toe the line there's a lot of reasons. I look at what happened with Rachel Hotmeyer, where she was able to find out that where Kim Pegula was and what was happening, with her status in the hospital. And she immediately started getting shit, threats, stuff from, Bill's Mafia people being like, stay out of their life, do this. And it's like, listen, reporters are reporters for a reason. You got to get to the bottom of stuff. That's the job.
You mentioned that gray area. This is where you're so right, because it's their job.
Right. But you have some constraints on that though. Like you're not gonna, you can't get hospital records. You can't get any of that stuff.
Right.
If somebody from the hospital is foolish enough to tell you what's going on, that's different. That's more at the fault of whoever at the hospital would say something, or somebody in the organization, or somebody around the family. Like if somebody gives you that information, that's a different story. But usually, when you get to like the level of info where, as far as Rachel got, like I think of what happened with Kyla Pozo a few years back, and it got to the point, and Tom Martin, my old pal from Channel 4, was able, got some of the information and found out like, okay, he was in the hospital for this. That news never would have got out at all if somebody didn't have that story come up and was like, oh shoot, he was in the hospital, that's bad. And then team jumped right to it to like kind of like, hey, okay, here's what the deal is, and here's Kyle in his own words to describe what's happening. Okay, like that's controlling the story, controlling what happens. And Like that's a whole other thing. But with something like this is, I don't know if I think honestly there is a fear of some kind of blowback from the organization, from PSE, that if you dig too far, that you could be shut out. You could be,
you ain't going to get no more interviews.
You might get blacklisted.
Right.
This, that,
Yeah.
It's never, I can't say never with PSE because they act weird about, they've acted weird about stuff in the past, but they'll never outright tell you like you're screwed if you report on any of this stuff. Like that's not the case, because if you want that to be the case, everybody's your PR outfit in the city. If you're able to control that message by saying like, okay, nobody says anything or else you're in trouble. You're in trouble with us and you'll never work in this town again. Then everybody's just functioning as PR. You're not reporters then. That to me, that's what the case is. Because if you're just going to go by what teams release and what they, and what they say publicly, if that's where your questions about what's going on stop, then you're not doing your job.
Let me ask you this, Joe. Let's say I'm Patrick Moran, Buffalo Bills or Buffalo Sabres beat reporter for the Buffalo News or for The Athletic. Either or, don't really matter. Or WGR, doesn't matter. But I'm somebody in the mainstream media, and I do get wind of exactly what's going on. And I've confirmed it too. It's not speculation. Like I find out, and it's steady, solid information. I put out a report that says Kim Pegula is in a Florida hospital and her situation is this, that, and the other thing. And her condition is this, that, and the other thing. Maybe I've talked to a source, a doctor or something, and maybe I have some information, or maybe I don't. Now, I agree 100%. If you say the name of the hospital and you start to go into that stuff, then I think that does become unnecessary reporting. You know what I mean? But I feel like enough people want to know or what's going on, or it should know what's going on. I personally feel like if I did that, I don't think I would be in the wrong. But again, I'm asking this as a legitimate question, man. Maybe I am wrong, and maybe media people will tell me that I would be wrong to do that, and I would certainly respect that. That's why I'm kind of asking if I did that and I said she's in the hospital and this is this and that and the other thing. Am I wrong for doing that? Morally, ethically?
Well, morals and ethics that's an even grayer area than all this. Like
journalism can be hard. That's kind of what we're getting at here.
Yeah.
Folks. It can
be. When it comes to ethics, like when you go through J school or, J adjacent school, whatever, ethics is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it really dictates a lot of what happens, because if you have zero ethics, you're working at TMZ or, someplace else that just, does not give a crap about, whether or not somebody's privacy's been invaded or whatever. TMZ will take pictures of people like outside, just living their own life. And it's just kind of like, oh, here's a big story, blah, let's print it everywhere. Whereas if you believe yourself to be a legit journalist, it's the line between it being news and it being, I don't know, morbid, or I don't know what the right word there is, but
by the way,
crossing the privacy line, I guess.
I want to point out to everyone too that sometimes Joe and I talk about topics ahead of time. I purposely didn't bring this up because I wanted an organic response from you, not necessarily something that you had time to think on for a long period of time. You know what I mean? I wanted to find out what your instant reaction would be. It's just it's a sad, first and foremost, it's a horribly sad topic to even discuss. Anyone, whether it's Kim Pegula or Mary Jo, whoever, anybody in any kind of bad condition is always sad.
Right.
I've just been sitting there pounding my head saying, because I've talked to some friends who are like, they, for whatever reason, they think I know stuff that I don't, but they're like, yo, what's going on with Kim Pegula? What's this and that? And I'm like, I feel like I know some people who do, and there's just nothing being reported. And I'm wondering if it's because they're afraid to, or if I'm wondering because you think it's wrong to. I guess that's what it comes down to.
That I think is a real question for a lot of reporters, around the situation. People are like, well, if there's a story to break, Adam Schefter will get it. It's like, well, if it has something to do with, personal things with ownership, he's probably not going to cross that line. Like,
maybe you're probably right.
I mean, that's where his bread's buttered.
I agree. But here's the thing where I keep thinking in my mind, this is a co-owner in a smaller market.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you if this was Robert Kraft or if this was Jerry Jones or if this was, I shouldn't say I bet you, but if this was Dan Snyder, I have a very difficult time believing that nobody from ESPN or Fox or that local, wherever, city that person's from, I have a very hard time believing that we would know nothing. And this is going on weeks too, by the way. It's not just a couple days. This is going on weeks.
It's a couple weeks now. I think I think a big part of this is that the Pegulas don't really have a lot of media people that they reach out to, period.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that plays a part in a lot of the secrecy. Also the seriousness of the situation plays a lot into that too. Because basically the only people that will know are, people at the hospital or people that are very close to ownership or close with the teams that they would be in the loop as to what's going on. And I would bet anything that those people that are with the team, that if it ever got out that they said it, they would be fired within 10 seconds. They'd be out on their ear, but
sure.
But like, the cross between it being something where, you're not going to be able to report on it, or you can't, or you can and you don't. That I think is tough. And like, honestly, this is a story where it's really tough to get concrete evidence of like what's going on, unless you have like a doctor from the hospital or a hospital rep telling you, okay, here's what the deal is,
or somebody on the inside,
or somebody from the family telling you, okay, basically. Here's right. But even if it's a mole, like,
trustworthy,
you gotta, I don't know, I guess it depends on how close they are with that inner circle. Like if that's somebody that's like right next to them, then it's like, okay, I can trust that. But if it's somebody who's like, yeah, I heard it from so-and-so who heard it from so-and-so, then you probably can't run with that. Like that's where journalistic judgment comes into play, because that's the line between being a journalist and a gossip writer, like
it's a career ender, right? You go someone like Kim Pegula in that condition, and that completely ends up being accurate,
right?
For the most part, you can pretty much kiss your career goodbye,
right? And like I know the one person who's even said anything about this is Tim Graham, and I understand Tim's take on this as well. He's like, listen, I know it's a big story, but listen, I'm not going to go fouling up the waters with me doing my digging to find out what's going on. It's like when there's a story to come out, it'll come out. Like that's not up. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to unearth what's happening, which that's fair. That's his perspective. And like,
and it's a fair one.
It's completely fair in his position.
Sure.
Like that's something where you can't, and you probably, I mean, just for your own sake, you probably just shouldn't be, digging into that stuff. But, I think if what makes this even fuzzier for me is that, people are, listen, everybody deserves privacy, especially when it comes to medical stuff, but also when you're a multi-billionaire and you own two teams and you own multiple entertainment outlets and you own more than two teams, you own two arenas, you've got all this stuff going on. You're a public figure.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little different.
Sure.
When it comes to this kind of stuff like that, like, yes, you deserve privacy. Like you don't need to have all your, not your entire story needs to be out there, but when it concerns both franchises in the city. And if there's something up there and it might cause, and if it causes like an issue down the road, or it causes things to be kind of, thrown up in the air, then, I think there's, I guess there's a right to know. I mean, I don't know, a right to know is one thing, but like, it's something that should be, at least in the most basic sense, kept apprised of. I don't think it's something where you can just like shut it down and go silent for weeks on end and say like, okay, well, we'll update you when we feel like it. Like, that's the tough part. But like this is a really difficult one, just because of the seriousness and based on what the message was from the team or the organization about, like, hey, this, demand our privacy. Like those, you don't usually ask for, demanding privacy if it's not a very serious thing. Like if she's laid up with like an appendectomy or something like that, it's usually like, okay, well, should be out in a
Right.
week.
Right.
But like, if it's something more serious than that, you're probably not asking for prayers. You're probably not asking for stuff like that, privacy and things like that. Like, you're just, it's one of these things where idle speculation leads to wild stuff being thought of, and sometimes wild stuff being considered to be fact.
Right.
Whereas opposed to the truth is what would truth would at least free up that, but also, the truth might be really hard to hear, or, maybe the truth is just, it's just not something that people need to know at the moment, like that's, especially if it's a medical thing that can like change on the fly. Like, yeah, you don't need, minute by minute updates, but like, she's a major figure. She's a major public figure, and there's also they're getting a almost $1 billion in state money thing. Like,
right,
that's like that. There's a lot there where the public should know what's going on, but it's a fine line between how much is okay to know.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's a fascinating topic, and one I quite frankly don't really know the answer to. The one thing we can all agree on is that we hope things obviously turn out for the best when it comes.
I'm glad you surprised me with this, because this is a serious discussion I've been wanting to kind of have for a bit, but like, I don't know how to approach it. I don't want to have a serious conversation like that on Twitter, because that stuff goes sideways immediately.
Right,
like,
right.
But this was good to kind of talk it out.
I didn't want to I didn't want to. That's literally what we kind of did, is talk it out, because again, you didn't really have time to pre-prepare what your thoughts would be.